There is a famous mathematical paradox designed by Zeno, an ancient Greek philosopher, which showed the inconsistency between theoretical mathematical logic and practical application we see in this physical world. Zeno declared that finite space is made up of infinite space, a notion nobody could fathom to be true in the physical sense, as a limited amount of space is indeed limited. Zeno's logic, however, was that finite space can keep being divided into subintervals, which can further keep being divided into countless smaller intervals. But this mathematical logic only seems to apply to the fantastical bag of Mary Poppins, a far cry away from the boring old bags of our world. Similar to finite space being made of infinite space, he noted that this could apply to distances as well. The subintervals on an interval of distance could keep multiplying, preventing one from technically reaching the end of a given interval of distance, something probably only witnessed on the cyclical motions of something like a washing machine. But Zeno's are not the only paradoxes which exemplify inconsistency between the theoretical and the practical. There are some other notable paradoxes in the field of physics that exemplify a natural contradiction in the very nature of our reality, from general relativity, which gave rise to the grandfather paradox and challenges with the contradictory nature of time, to the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which was proved to be paradoxical by the Schrödinger's cat thought experiment. Scientists have encountered what they have identified as rational inconsistencies still in need of improvement. But what if perhaps we could also take this to assume that our reality, time, space, distance, quantum systems are somehow inherently paradoxical? That contradiction between theoretical and practical are simply the very nature of our reality, and that such contradictions in science are what lend these ideas to the truth. All existing phenomena is built upon a foundation of pairs. Everything that is materially expressed, be it the human body fashioned with each limb mirroring another, or the binary system of communicating with ones and zeros, reduces down to two basic elements. Even that which appears omniscient upon closer examination is also dual in its foundations. Like the sun, which is a singular entity but burns mainly because of the combination of hydrogen and helium. Or even something like a tricycle, which rests upon three tires, but in actuality is reduced to the dual mechanisms of the front and back tires. But duality is not limited to just the physical. It is ever present in every dialectical experience the world has ever gone through, with each idea, each movement being opposed by an opposite. Convention and innovation, collectivism and individualism, the spiritual and the secular, are some among countless other abstract polarities which frequently feature in conversations about many aspects of human life. So just as there can never be pleasure without pain, sunshine without rain, peace without chaos, there can also never be a proposition without a corresponding opposition. Now here lies an important assumption. If everything in our physical world can be reduced to a duality, perhaps we can say that this reality is also based upon a dual system. Even though it is not always considered so, a duality or a pair can be considered as two opposites. And even though two things are opposites, they are still both equally true and real at once, which would make them a paradox. That is to say that if all physical reality is based on duality, then reality is a system of paradoxes. We don't usually consider opposites to be inherently contradictory of each other because we see two opposites clearly existing at the same time. It is when we encounter two opposites in the abstract, something we cannot justify through its physical existence but rather through the theoretical, that they become contradictory. To exemplify this dizzying idea, let's have a look at the infamous liar paradox, which was meant to demonstrate flaws with Aristotelian logic. This statement is false. If which is true is false, and if is false is true. True and false are two opposites which we are aware contradict each other, in that something that exists cannot be both true and false at once. But in this statement, we are confronted with an undeniable reality, which is that the statement is in fact both true and false. The reoccurrence of paradoxes in our existence is not some kind of logical error. Instead, it may be an accurate reflection of the reality that we live in, where two opposite phenomena exist at once to create a whole truth. True and false are just different sides of the same pole. The pole of speech, for instance, a reality of this world. In other words, they are two different expressions which are united in essence. In the Islamic cosmology, one explanation that deals with the nature of existence is that of the world of light and the world of shadows. This material reality is often referred to as the world of shadows, in contrast with the world of light, which is the true reality. The world of light is characterized by God's divine light, and each thing in the world of light casts a shadow on this world, which is the thing that it corresponds to. So, for example, water as we know and experience it is a kind of lesser version, a mere impression of the actual water in the world of light. Similarly, there is God and his shadow on earth, which is the true man, as in Muhammad, peace be upon him. Some extend this position to include the good of humanity, known as his vicegerents on this earth. All this phenomena exists on a pole with two ends, the thing from the world of light and the thing from the world of shadow. They are both the same but also different, expressed in differing degrees of power or realness. This to me seems to fall within the bounds of what is paradoxical, as it is the same but also two different things at the same time. Furthermore, another integral part of the cosmology is barzakh, the in-between state. There are many variations of barzakh, and the state of consciousness between life and death, for instance, is a very commonly known one. Human beings are considered a barzakh, as their nature is usually between two extremes. They are neither fully objective or subjective in their consciousness and possess imagination, which, according to Rusbihan Buckley, stands between pure intellect and sensory perception, allowing each to participate in the other's nature. But all this simplifies to the most fundamental of barzakhs, between the unmanifest divine essence and the manifest divine cosmos, a foundational duality in the Islamic cosmology. The existence of barzakh and the human existence as a barzakh state reflects the intermediary nature of human beings and the need to consider a two-sided experience in this life, regardless of the opposing nature of two ends of a pole. Essentially, it can be seen as a need to embrace the paradoxical nature of the human experience. Plato's allegory of the cave can be taken as a further explanation of the significance of the world of light and the world of shadows. To briefly summarize, prisoners in a cave, having lived their whole lives there, only see shadows reflected upon the inner wall of the cave, which are cast by those carrying objects and fire on the outer wall of the cave. When a prisoner is freed, he realizes that the world outside the cave is the true reality, and what they saw inside the cave were mere shadows of actual things. Yet some still chose to remain within the cave as they knew no other life. Plato used this analogy to show the importance of knowledge and trying to understand a higher reality which exceeds this existence through reason. Many Sufis would agree and disagree with this at the same time, and the reason why lies in the nature of the veil. The veil is that which hides the divine light, reality, God, from the world. And the Sufi's mission on the surface is to experience an unveiling of this veil and to reach full realization or enlightenment. However, this is a very oversimplified notion. Al-Nifari concluded that because a veil is something which keeps us from God, everything other than God is a veil. Even knowledge is a veil because knowledge is not God himself. More specifically, first, everything, even unveiling, is a veil. Second, the self is the greatest veil. And lastly, God's guidance is the only way to truly emerge from behind the veils. The first point is an interesting paradox. If everything other than God is a veil, then any act of perception is also a veil, because human beings cannot perceive God the way that God perceives himself, as he is the absolute, wujud, and everything that is other than God will forever be an other, as its separation from God is that which causes its very existence. Yet still the veil is unveiled. Ibn Arabi explains how through God's will the veil can be lifted and enough light shines through to guide a person through the darkness of the veil they experience. But God will never lift all the veils entirely, and people should not wish for that. This shows that everything other than God, as in the veils, as in this world, as in the paradoxical reality, can only be broken through by God's will and God's will alone. According to these perspectives, it is not possible for a person, as long as he is something separate from God, that he ceases to experience the paradoxical. What further consolidates the dual and thus paradoxical nature of the veil is the omnipotence of what ultimately lies beyond it. Additionally, if everything other than God is a veil, and if veiling and unveiling are one and the same, then the paradoxical nature of the veil is the paradoxical nature of all created phenomena. However, knowledge is the only way to unveil the veils, even though knowledge itself is also considered a veil. A passage from Al-Nifari best concludes the relationship between knowledge and the veil. O my servant, veil yourself from knowledge by knowledge, and you will be veiled by a near veil. Do not veil yourself from knowledge by ignorance, lest you be veiled by a far veil. O my servant, cast your knowledge and your ignorance into the sea. I will take you as a servant, and I will inscribe you as secure. So it is knowledge which transports the prisoner outside of the veil, of the cave, into yet another veil, where the divine light is felt slightly more strongly than before. God's oneness is the foundation of the Islamic faith, with rejection of this tawheed, this oneness, resulting in the cardinal and most unforgivable of sins. But his ultimate oneness is juxtaposed with his attributes, which are many. He is known to have 99 names depicting his attributes, depicting the multiplicity of his oneness. A similar concept is reflected in humanity, his shadow. Sayyid Hussain Nasr best describes the multiplicity of Islam by likening it to the intricacies of a Persian carpet. The vast world of Islam is actually like a Persian medallion carpet. It has incredible diversity and complexity, yet it is dominated by a unity into which all the complex geometric and arabesque patterns are integrated. One can gain a better grasp of the whole by separating the patterns and seeing how each is related to the vertical and horizontal dimensions of the religion of Islam itself, as well as to cultural, ethnic, and linguistic factors. Then reuniting the patterns and seeing how they all fit together yields a vision of the total spectrum of Islam, in which unity leads to diversity and diversity is integrated into unity. We are faced with yet another paradox, multiplicity and oneness. But as mentioned before, all dualities rest upon a singular pole, and if multiplicity and oneness are two separate expressions of the same oneness, is oneness then dissolved into oneness? Ibn Arabi is arguably most famous for his controversial concept of Wadat al-Wujud, according to which God is one, yet we are all God and God is in everything. I believe this statement is usually greatly misunderstood by most who jump on the bandwagon of accusing him of associating partners with God and thus contradicting his oneness. If likened to the Persian carpet example, it becomes obvious that the threads are indeed part of the carpet, yet the carpet as a whole is one cohesive thing. No one thread can equal an entire carpet. According to Ibn Arabi, all of creation is to be annihilated into unity, to return to unity, to return to God. I don't think this inherently has to take away from God's power or oneness, reducing him to being solely comprised of his creation, but rather that creation is a part of God, perhaps not the whole part, and even if it is the whole part, it may still not be the mathematical equivalence that we imagine today, that the whole is made up of its parts. Perhaps a whole is made up of its parts but is inherently whole with or without them. Perhaps along with the multiplicity, oneness as an expression can also be annihilated within an ultimate oneness. With this paradoxical statement, let's turn to some practical implications. If we accept this reality as one of paradoxes, it could resolve some of the logical inconsistencies with certain existing paradoxes, both outside and within the bounds of religion. That is to say that anything that is considered paradoxical may now be considered as true or real, rather than something which has some kind of logical flaw or problem, a reflection of the reality that we live in. And when we are confronted by paradoxes, whether it be within the realm of scientific discovery or within philosophical, logical, or religious debate, it may be something that lends itself to the truth. Now, perhaps this idea that two conflicting things can coexist and be true at once is almost too convenient of a resolution, as it has been presented under Islamic framework, presenting a rather fatal inconsistency when it comes to one aspect. If two different things can, or rather actually, be the same thing at the same time, then is right wrong and wrong right? While there have been clear bounds set for ethics and correct action in the Quran, this becomes challenging to resolve. Although it is tempting to simply disregard this as another paradox, I believe that that is not a satisfying enough of a resolution. This whole theory is based within the world of ideas, the theoretical, the intangible, the spiritual, the world of light. In this case, it is separate from action. It deals in principles and attributes, and thus perhaps it can be said that right and wrong are united in principle or concept, and thus are annihilated within oneness, but are still distinct expressions in this world of shadows. For example, the attribute of having an overactive mind could lead to overthinking and delusion, but if used within the bounds of divine guidance, can also allow for great realization and understanding. In the end, we are faced with the limitation of reason. As we try to understand existence, this perspective shows us how reason itself is a trap of the veil, keeping one stuck in trying to find an ultimate truth in a dual paradoxical world. The only ultimate truth is that which lies beyond the veil, which we can only know exists, but cannot really know it as long as we are human.